Nobody expected this to happen this fast, but the Cleveland Browns didn't just move on from Dylan Gabriel. They made it clear he was never really part of the future to begin with, and the way it went down, even colder than people think. Because this wasn't a quiet benching, this wasn't a "we'll see how things play out." This was a direct message from Todd Monken that basically shut the door before the season even had a chance to breathe. And once you hear everything that led up to it, yeah, this whole situation starts looking a lot different. Because from the moment Monken stepped into Cleveland, something felt off. Not chaotic, not uncertain, just decisive. Like he already knew exactly who he wanted and who he didn't. And unfortunately for Dylan Gabriel, his name wasn't on that list, but the real story? It didn't start with that meeting. It started way before that. When the Browns first brought in Dylan Gabriel, there was real belief behind it. This wasn't some throwaway move. This was a pick they actually invested in. A quarterback with flashes, confidence, and just enough upside to make people think, maybe there's something here, and early on you could see why. There were moments where Gabriel looked sharp. Quick reads, clean throws, flashes of control. The kind of stuff that gets fans talking and coaches paying attention. But the problem? It never stayed consistent. One drive would look promising. The next would completely stall out. One game would give you hope. The next would raise even more questions. And in the NFL, that inconsistency, it catches up to you fast. Especially when you're not the only one fighting for that spot. Because while Gabriel was trying to prove he belonged, someone else was quietly doing a whole lot more than that, and that's where things started shifting. While fans were debating who should start, Todd Monken wasn't debating anything, he was observing. And what he kept seeing was Shedeur Sanders separating himself in ways that didn't even need a stat sheet to explain, because it wasn't just about numbers, it was how he carried himself. Calm in chaos, composed under pressure, the kind of presence that doesn't need to force anything. When plays broke down, he didn't panic. When the moment got bigger, he got better. And that's the type of thing coaches lock onto immediately, because you can teach mechanics. You can't teach that kind of control. And once Monken saw it, everything else started moving quickly. Because while everyone else thought there was still a competition, that decision was already being made behind the scenes. And Dylan Gabriel, he was already falling behind. But it didn't stop there. Because what happened next made things even worse. At some point, this stopped being just about performance. It became about attitude. Because reports started surfacing that Gabriel wasn't exactly embracing the competition the way you'd expect, instead of letting his play speak for itself. There were comments, subtle, but noticeable, referring to guys like Shedeur as entertainers instead of competitors. And yeah, that kind of statement doesn't stay quiet in an NFL locker room, because inside that environment, respect isn't optional. It's everything. And when that line starts getting blurred, teammates notice, coaches notice. And suddenly, it's not just about how you play anymore. It's about how you fit. And from that point on, the gap didn't just grow on the field. It started growing off it too. But somehow, it still wasn't the breaking point, because then things got personal. Just when it felt like the situation couldn't get more tense, it spilled onto social media. And this is where everything really started to turn. Because according to reports, Gabriel's fiancée jumped into the conversation and took shots at Shedeur Sanders. Now in today's NFL, social media drama is already dangerous. But during a quarterback battle, that's gasoline on a fire. And here's the part that really stood out. Gabriel didn't shut it down. No public response. No attempt to distance himself. No, that's not how I move energy. Just silence. And in a league where leadership is constantly being evaluated, that silence speaks loud. Because quarterbacks aren't just judged on throws. They're judged on presence, on accountability, on how they handle uncomfortable situations. And in that moment, a lot of people started asking the same question. Is this really the guy you want leading your locker room? And that question, it didn't go away. It got louder. But the biggest shift was still coming. Then everything reset.